Welcome to the Landmark Theater's Q&A podcast. In this podcast, you will hear a discussion with director Bennett Miller from the film Foxcatcher, moderated by Variety's Jenelle Riley, recorded at the Landmark West LA.
How did this story find its way to you? Do you remember when these events occurred?
I don't remember when the story happened, but about 8 years ago, a complete stranger approached me in a store. It was a Tower Video. They was doing a little DVD signing for my documentary, which is called The Cruise.
I know.
Which is a very nerdy event. I mean, there's maybe 27 people that came to it, but one of them was this guy who handed me an envelope that contained newspaper clippings about the story. And he said, I think you're going to want to turn this into a film, and I know somebody who knows Mark Schultz.
And did he give you his info or just disappeared into
and he's credited as an executive producer.
It's amazing. And the story spoke to you immediately?
Yeah. This is the one question that always stumps me. Like, what was it about it? It just was. You know, it was just the relationship. You know, the oddity of it all, of the super wealthy guy, wrestlers.
I know that a story like this could have been told in a very lurid manner, sort of sensationalized. And you have, I read this quote that I love, you call it an austere haiku style. So from the beginning, did you know you wanted this to be more of a character study?
The more I researched it, the less interested I was in the sensational aspects of it. And it is about the relationships. It is about who these people were and who they were to each other and what the transaction was. And because these characters are so inarticulate, most of what's occurring is not spoken. It happens beneath the surface. And so part of the reason for the style of the film, which is very austere, is to sensitize you to what's happening beneath the surface. And
How did the DuPont family feel about this?
I really don't know. I mean, I had very little contact with them before. And the only person who was directly involved with John DuPont from the family was a lawyer who was not friendly, but he was not obstructive, he was not threatening, but he was clear that this was not a happy thing for them. And I've only met one person from the DuPont family now who has seen the film a couple of days ago, and he quite liked it.
Really?
Yeah.
What about the Schultz family? I know that they've sort of been involved.
Yeah. They throughout the researching and developing of the thing, and then they visited the set. Mark Schultz, very generous about sharing his story. It took a little work for him to be honest about it, but because I spoke to so many people, I was able to return again and again, and because it took so long to make, we developed, a relationship where there was some measure of trust, and I could say, listen, Robbie Calabrese told me that you guys did a lot of cocaine together. Can you, it's true, and then he'd tell me the stories. Nancy Schultz, extremely generous. Mark Ruffalo developed a special relationship with her. She could have regarded us with a lot of suspicion, but she was the opposite. She was trusting and generous. I mean, Ruffalo was a state champion wrestler. Part of the reason why he's cast and why he wanted to be in it for others, along with other reasons. But Ruffalo's a righty and wanted to wrestle like Dave, and so he learned to, lead left. And, when his wrestling friends saw him not just walking and talking and acting like him, and I also think Ruffalo has a similar heart to Dave Schultz. When people saw him, it really sort of brought back the truth of the story. And so it felt very alive that this happened, and everything else in the swirl of the atmosphere made for a kind of a quiet, somber, but focused, respectful set where the actors can do what they needed to do.
Question about, I guess, addressing the homosexual rumors.
Yeah, and what's made explicit in the film and what's chosen not to be explicit. And she made a comment about John grabbing wrestlers' testicles.
In real life.
Which is something I asked about. The guys joked about it. There's a move called the Foxcatcher 5. Also known as 5-on-2. And, but I was actually talking to, there was a whole bunch of Foxcatcher wrestlers that came to the premiere the other night as part of AFI. And they were talking about this. And they said, yeah, but he never pulled that on us. And it was just, that existed, but none of them could say that had ever happened. But this is a character who could not accept the truth about himself. And he cast himself in a role that he could not live up to. And I think that the dissonance between who he was and who he needed to believe he was too painful to bear. And as it came further into relief, especially in the presence of Dave Schultz, who just naturally had the comfort in a way with people and trust, and was masterful at what he did, I think that it just became more and more stressful. But one component of it, I think, was his sexuality, one aspect that was repressed. And everyone I spoke to a person, said that he never really revealed any explicit tendencies. But I don't think that there was a question that was there. And so it just ends up being one more thing shoved down in the powder keg of his psyche.
I mean, I think it's safe to say Carell's cast against type here.
Yeah. Well, Channing was the first person cast. I offered him the role 7 or 8 years ago. I saw Guide to Recognizing Your Saints. It's the first time I'd seen him, heard of him, and I offered him the role back then before there was a script. I got in touch with him. I said, I'm trying to make this film, and I was really drawn to the notion of casting a complete unknown. Totally true. Absolutely true. I also just thought, as I'm turning the film over in my head and beginning to develop it and research it, and then I see this film, Guide to Recognizing Your Saints, there is somebody who can do this, because in the back of my mind, I'm wondering who can do this. And I cannot imagine anybody else in that role. I can't imagine anybody else in any of the roles, except for the people who are in them. In Carell, it was not my idea. His agent submitted his name, and it just made a lot of sense to put somebody in that role who you do not expect can do what he does, which is how it felt to the people down on the farm, despite all of the evidence. And the way the film is conceived, it's meant to crystallize backwards. You know, I think the film, as you're watching it, might have an ambiguous feeling, a sense about it. Like you might feel like the tension of miscommunication that occurs between people in different wills not being admitted, but it's normal to ask yourself, like, what is this? Like, what is this film, and where is it going, and what is it saying, and not having the satisfaction of those answers. And for me, the ambition was to create something that would hopefully provoke you to rethink what it was, because I think that resembles what the experience was.
I wanted to know what the research process was like for it. It was incredibly impressive, the wildly divergent worlds that you depicted, and the truth, especially the old money atmosphere, which you nailed everything.
Are you intimate with those worlds?
Actually, yes. Yeah, not as much the wrestling one,
But the old money world?
Yes, it was, yes.
Are you a DuPont?
I am not a DuPont.
Are you looking to finance films?
Part of the research of that world, I relied heavily on Jess Gonshore, who's a production designer who I worked with on everything, and also a second unit director on the film. And I discovered with Capote that he just has the greatest people that were able to source out incredible things, including photographs. The opening montage of those home movies are from films on Foxcatcher Farm, and photographs, interviewing with people, and again, it benefited from a lengthy process because things kept on cropping up, and we kept on discovering books. And as far as the wrestling side goes, there are just so many people available. I'm so happy to see a packed house, by the way, because it's been 8 years, in the making, and the thing opened yesterday.
Yeah.
And thank you so much.